Hey everybody, welcome back. The Bad Pennies are back. I am Sho, and this is my friend Alan. And you're gonna like this one.
Well, yeah, I hope so. So we're going to talk about something that we've literally avoided for all of the podcasts that we've done so far this year, and that is the subject of sex.
Sex.
And sex can bring up a lot of connotations for different people.
We probably lost about like 20,000 viewers right now.
Or we gained 20 just because we said the word sex, right?
Yeah,
so
all depends on what the algorithm thinks also.
Right, it's well, back in the days when I was working in TV and movies, one of the things that we knew that would draw an audience would be sex, something about it. So
there you go.
So let's just start, because what we're going to talk about is more of the context of sex.
Okay.
And I want to just get it out there that sex is a natural and normal human function.
There wouldn't be people without sex.
Without sex, I mean, it's a world function. It's a among all living creatures, with only a few exceptions. Sex is required for reproduction.
Yeah.
And so we are not left out of that picture in any way.
I wouldn't be here if my parents didn't do it.
That's right. But the thing about sex is that we tend to take it to another level where it's not about reproduction, but it's more about fun.
Right.
All right.
So what are we talking about now? Reproduction or fun?
Well, we're going to kind of combine the two, because I want to just say that I don't want to offend anybody, but at the same time, I want to make sure that all of you understand that if you follow a particular religious practice and then follow it. Most religions have defined sex contextually and also procedurally, and the importance of it before and after marriage and during marriage, and preparing yourself for a relationship. And I would just say do that. And if you're not doing that, you might want to ask yourself why. Because I've known a lot of people that were very heavily religious, but they didn't follow the religion. And I'm like, well, why? Why would you be, whatever that particular religion was, and not actually follow it? Well, I don't believe in that part. Well, no. Then why are you in that religion?
Yeah,
right? It's like sort of picking and choosing, like going to a buffet and saying, well, it's the religion buffet. I like this part. But I don't like that.
Right.
I like this one over here. But no, I don't like.
Right.
No. If you're gonna do it, then do it.
Yeah.
Do it right. Do it. Go all the way with it. And I guess we're gonna have a lot of double entendres in this conversation. But ultimately, you got to follow what you know to be right.
Okay.
And I would encourage you to do that. Now, contextually, sex has been in a lot of Western cultures, and things around sex, almost a taboo. Something you don't talk about, something that not in polite circles, we don't.
Yeah.
Sex.
Yeah.
You don't say, hey, yeah, I had great sex last night. He's like, so how's it going? So it's almost like you're embarrassed,
yeah.
and which is weird, but it exists, and I understand in many ways why. But the more it's out in the open as a normal human function, the more we can actually deal with it on those kinds of levels, especially when you develop phobias around it and things, all right, and difficulties and other kinds of things, and you can't talk about it because or you have to go to a professional, and even then it's difficult to talk about. And it's just we get into this really murky area because we can't talk about sex as if it's just a function like having to eat, because in order to reproduce we have to have sex, and in order to live you have to eat. So I would encourage everyone to, take a look at the areas where it's difficult to embrace that sex is normal and natural, um, including it extends to your bodies too. Whether we start to feel embarrassed about our bodies and stuff like that, and all of this stuff is connected. So let's just say that as men, since that's who we're addressing, we're talking to men, and I'm sure there are women that are watching this, and that's okay. But you may understand some of it, you may not, and maybe it'll help you with the men in your life, and I hope it does. But as fathers or as adults, we do have a responsibility that has been lost.
Which is?
Teaching boys, and teaching them not just as you said earlier, the sort of the mechanics of sex, the birds and the bees, that old conversation, right?
Right.
And again, there's a huge breakdown that's happening because fathers, let the schools do it, or send them somewhere else, or whatever, or even all of your own personal phobias come out when you're teaching your son about sex, and you just pass it on. So instead of being open and clear about it, but the mechanics are the mechanics for the most part, right? The general mechanics, okay?
Right.
I mean, we're not talking about
there's extras and
the extracurricular mechanics,
right.
But we're talking about the general mechanics. All right, so that's pretty much been the same for millions of years, but what's more important is the context that isn't getting taught. And the context is that's getting lost is the respect quality.
Respect for each other.
Respect for each other, respecting women. That what I see is a very pervasive thing where women are not looked at as the other half of the human race, but as receptacles for sex, and pleasure, and if a boy develops that growing up in his teens and early teens, he'll often carry it into his adulthood. And it makes it very difficult to be in a monogamous relationship. It makes it very difficult to have a good context within a relationship with a woman around sex, because sex in a long-term relationship stops being about us, and it stops being about the pursuit of pleasure, or the pursuit of quick, releases and pleasure and things like that, because it takes on a much more important role in a long-term relationship.
It's part of the preservation of the relationship.
Right. It is. The bonding and intimacy are incredibly important to a good, long-lasting marriage, right? Relationship. So, but if one of these other contexts develop, it makes it very difficult for a boy when he becomes a man to have a good context within the marriage. And there are a lot of results because of that, including cheating, or an unhappiness. I'm not getting the kind of sex that I got when I was single, and and why doesn't my wife give me the kind of sex that I want, and all of that kind of stuff, which is no longer important or even necessary.
So
when you're married,
there's one thing I did see that I hope I get this right. Women, talking about wives specifically, okay? Wives see sex like it's a dessert, whereas it's good if you get some, but it's okay if you don't. Whereas husbands see sex as a meal. Good if you get some, something's wrong if you don't.
or even a glass of water that you got to drink, as many times a day as you can. Right? So, yeah, we approach it differently, and again, women have a lot of pressure. I'm not going to get into some of the depth of the psychology around it, but there's a lot of pressure around women around their sexuality, and that men are, especially as they're growing up, are viewed as something to avoid, or something that's dangerous to them or to their well-being. And then as they grow up and become women, then they're told that in order for them to really be a fully self-expressed woman, they need to be married and have a man in their life. And so, like, what you mean, like this dangerous thing that I was supposed to avoid, all those years, and now you're telling me that I have to like live with one,
right,
and deal with one, and so
it can be confusing.
It can be very confusing, and it makes sex very confusing.
Okay.
So, and the purpose of it. So, let's just say that, and we're going to get in deeper into some following podcasts, but let's just, for the time being, agree the fact that before you get married, or when you're, and again, this is for those who are not following a religion that prohibits that kind of behavior, but there are a lot of people in the world who experience sex before they get married. All right, and again, I think for all of us, too much of that can actually become a problem as well. Personally, I mean, you may not agree with me, but I think that it sets a context that's difficult to get out of. But it may not be a bad thing to find out what works, and find out how to please a woman, and how to have a woman please you, and how to be intimate with someone. And but most of that kind of sex before you get married is about fun. Okay, it's about fun.
It's about pleasure.
It's about fun. Well,
about
pleasure,
satisfaction, and only taking care of your needs or wants.
Yeah, it's about you. It's about you, and in many ways, the other person is not as important, and so you're basically using them for personal pleasure, and
so you don't have to do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it is kind of like doing yourself, only with someone else present, really, in a lot of ways, right?
I've heard it said that way before.
Yeah, I have too. So in fact, I actually have said it. So you see how this sort of we have to tread. Is the more we get into this, the more carefully we have to tread. But because I don't want to get dogmatic about it, I just want to make sure that that there's an awareness that's developed, and also about how we're bringing up our children to be aware of their sexuality, and a good healthy context that sex that sex fits into, right? It's not that you have sex and then try to figure out how it's supposed to work. Having the context first actually works. Otherwise, there's again a lot of confusion, a lot of mistakes that are made along the way, and as parents, we're responsible. We're responsible, because where else are they going to get good context? And if you think that you're going to send them, to a class or to school or wherever that they're teaching sex ed or whatever, it's sure they're going to get the mechanics, but they're not going to get the context.
Okay, so for us right now on this podcast, as we talk about what the context is, we have to establish that there is a separation between premarital sex and in-marriage sex.
Yes, there is.
So,
and the purposes are different.
Yes,
again, right?
Purposes are different.
And so,
and then we're
it's
also
a
talking
journey
about
of discovery, and again about fun, and getting to know yourself. You're getting to know how to be with the opposite sex,
learning what you like and what you don't like,
how to please the opposite sex, how to and how to be pleased yourself. Okay, all of that's important. How the interaction, knowing what you will put up with and won't. In the future as you're looking for a partner, what the deal breakers are, so to speak.
Right.
And what are the things that you actually want, and so it will go along until for a lot of men, and I'm not going to say all anymore. I'm not even going to say most men. I would like to say most men, but I don't think it's true. But when we become adults, the process of short-term sex gets old and boring.
Short-term meaning your relationship
outside
is
an uncommitted. I mean, short-term,
just like Tinder dating and stuff like that.
Exactly. It's just where even if you're seeing each other for a few months or whatever, it's still short-term. There's no commitment. There's no ring. There's no date. Right? You're not going to get.
You're not planning
spend
family
the rest of your life together.
Opening bank accounts together.
And for a lot of men, the only thing that really holds that kind of relationship together is sex. All right. There may be a couple other factors.
Short term.
But short term in the short term world. And look, I'm not talking about serial sex or as we've said before, we call it sport fucking. Sport fucking is a completely separate deal with a separate context, and that's all it's about. It's just pleasure for the man and taking from the woman. And it's a continuous series of just unending sex with different partners, and there's not a lot of value in it. And I know some of you out there who are doing it are probably like, "What are you talking about? There's great value." Well, actually, there isn't, and you're lying to yourself. The short term is the process is really not as much about sex, but learning about yourself and your place in a relationship, and how to negotiate a relationship, and most importantly how to have fun with a woman, and she has to learn how to have fun with you, because the ways that men have fun are very different than the ways that women have fun, and we need to learn how to have fun together. And so it's a process of learning how to do that, and have fun together, which will be a very valuable skill to have when you are married, is to be able to have fun with your wife.
Okay.
Right? And show that your children, and again, ultimately, what we're talking about is when you have children, that relationship and the quality of that relationship, both on the direct relating level as well as the sexuality level, because the sexuality level is a very important part of the human experience. I'm not talking about sex, I'm talking about the sexuality level, being sexual with each other, having sexual tension with each other, just relating to each other as opposite sexes.
Yeah.
Right? And that becomes incredibly important to teach the children how they too someday will have a good relationship with the opposite sex.
So you're leading by example, but you're not necessarily like putting all that out there. Just
not all of it out there, but you're showing them that what a good relationship looks like.
Right.
And how that when you're able to have fun together, they learn how to have fun with the opposite sex, or know that it's important and know that it's possible. Even if they don't know how yet, at some point they will learn. So the whole sexuality and sex thing actually shifts and changes completely when it goes from the world of short-term relationships that are uncommitted. Okay, these are uncommitted relationships, to the world of marriage and a committed relationship, because the sex represents a whole different deal. It's no longer about fun. It's about connection and trust and bonding and intimacy. right? And those, it's almost like a wellspring in many ways. When sex disappears from a marriage, the marriage is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's an important element of a marriage, of a long-term marriage, and keeping it vibrant and intimate, and connected.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've seen it where there's been maybe when the couple got married, they had one sex life, but then as time goes on, the sex life changes.
It does. That's. I actually know a couple of men going through that right now, and they're upset.
She doesn't want to give me it anymore.
Well, or in the ways that he thinks that she should be giving it, and,
right?
And my, the work has been leading them to, getting over themselves about it, because their context about sex is no longer working. They're using an old mindset or context around it, and just like everything about who we are, and physically and emotionally and psychologically, we change over time. We evolve and change, and as we do, so does our sexuality. It changes. We can't. When you're my age, when you're in your late 60s or early 70s, you don't have the same kind of sex as you did when you were 25. And if you try, it's not going to work. And being disappointing. So you have to be able to have a good context about what good sex is at whatever age you're at. All
okay,
right?
fair.
And most importantly, what good sex is, if we're talking about long-term relationships, what good sex is in your marriage. Because it won't look like what good sex looked like when you were single. Good sex when you're single, covers all that other stuff that you were talking about, the whole addendum here to sex, not just the basic mechanics,
right,
but all of the, the freaky geeky stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And using, all kinds of,
extracurricular
toys and things, So, and then look, it doesn't mean you can't bring some of that into your marriage either to spice it up a little bit, but it's still not going to be the same as when you were single.
Right.
And because it has a different purpose. It has a different purpose. And for women in a marriage, one of the ways that you're doing a good job as a husband is that your wife wants to have sex with you. And because for her, in many ways, it's a reward. It's a reward for doing the right things. It's a reward for taking care of her and making her feel safe. Because that is, the biggest part of our job in a marriage as men is to take care of them and to make them feel safe, so that they can be, vulnerable and to be who they are, that they don't get to be most of the rest of the time, because it's not an easy world for them.
Okay.
It's a very, in many ways, dangerous and caustic world, and so they don't have a lot of places where they can open up and they can be vulnerable and be themselves, right? So a man can actually provide the opportunity for a woman to feel safe and to trust and to be feminine and whatever's whatever the things are underneath that she wouldn't want to show to the world because it's just too dangerous, that she can bring to her husband. And so and sex and intimacy are actually very tightly connected to those things.
But they're different.
But they are different. They are different. But
sex
remember,
and intimacy are different.
Sex, well, intimacy. This is interesting. A lot of people think that sex is intimate, is described as intimate, but intimacy in the marriage is actually not sex.
No, it's pretty much everything else.
It's life.
Yeah.
It's the light.
It's the spark of the relationship.
Exactly.
It's the ketchup on the hot dog.
Yeah, well, it's something that actually that takes place almost magically.
Okay.
And I don't like to use the word magic much, but in some ways it is, because you can't force it to happen. It happens as a result of the trust and the care that exists in the marriage.
Yeah.
And by the way, because sex happens also because of the trust and the care in the marriage. And so the difference, again, going back to the short-term time, is about taking. Your context as a man is about taking sex.
Okay.
All right. But in a long-term committed relationship, it becomes about giving.
Giving.
It's all about giving. It's all about giving to the other person. For both, not just for the man, but for the woman too. It's all about giving. So, and the way that each of you give are unique to you, but it's important that you give, that you understand that you're there to give, not to take. Because if you take sex in a marriage, you're now treating your wife like short term, and she knows it. She'll know it. And it won't be good for her.
No.
It will actually, again, because remember, it's taking, so you're actually robbing from your wife. You're stealing from her. And so you want to make sure that when you do have sex, that you're giving to her. Okay?
There you go.
So that's a good place to stop, right?
I think so.
Go out there, for you married men, go out there and give, and don't worry about yourself. Make it about her, and make it about how much you care about her, how much you love her, and how much she means to you.
And for the non-married men, we're saying learn.
Non-married men, learn. Learn about yourself. Learn about your place. Learn about sex. Learn about how to be, how to have fun.
Right. But if your religion does say no premarital sex, then
don't
follow your religion.
Then don't follow what your beliefs lead you to.
Yeah.
And you don't have to apologize for it. You don't have to.
There you go.
There's nothing in the world that we have to apologize for, as long as we don't hurt anybody.
I get it. Well, thanks again, Alan.
Huh?
Bad pennies. We'll be back.
Oh, we got through this one, didn't we?
Oh, we did.
Yeah, indeed.